Have you ever wondered what is the color of the India formable? Have you ever wondered if besides Hindustan that we've seen at Dev Diary, there's also actually Bharat being formable for the Hindu countries? Well, that wasn't really mentioned anywhere, unless in some comment sections, but today I can confirm to you, you can form Barat. And this video is gonna be an AAR after action report summarizing my Orisa into Barat campaign, which was, I'll be honest, it was even more fun than the Ottomans campaign. It might be because my skill increased a lot in between, but maybe just this region is so fun to play. Let's go and take a look what Orisa offers to us. So obviously Orisa is the country starting in the same place as in EU4, and it even has similar borders and similar subjects, with the difference subjects in EU5 can be of your color, just like in this case. If you're looking for any cool games to play ahead of EU5 release, it's still a few weeks ahead, make sure to check sponsor of this video, enable.com, that offers you cool discounts on thousands of games. So if you're planning to buy any games, you might check enable.com first, because they might get you better offers. Like look at this $5 for EU4 base game. Anyway, make sure to use link in the video description to support the channel. Exactly twice what the Ottomans have in 21 locations. Ottomans had it in 23 locations. Base tax is also almost twice as high as the Ottomans, 113, and with 40 income and 14 of balance, you are in a very sweet spot at the very start to start scaling. And on top of that, you have all these subjects to help you in the wars. So that sounds like a pretty good situation. Orisa, regarding unique content, has 17 dynamic historical events and 10 unique advances. Doesn't sound like a lot, but playing over here you'll be leveraging a lot stuff that is unique for the religion, unique for the culture and region, and in general the content for India. So let me start with just opening actions. You don't have any unique guarantee forms that you start with, just like, you know, I did have 2 for the Ottomans. Here you don't have anything, so you have to choose 2 for yourself. I decided to take 1 for the crown power and aristocracy societal value, as well as loyalty of subjects, which wasn't probably the best of a choice, but it was very helpful to keep all of these guys in check. After my Ottomans campaign and struggling to get absolutism, I decided to not take too many privileges at the start of this campaign, so I took from the Brahmins just more possible clerics to increase their loyalty, so the equilibrium was above 50%. From the burghers, I took them being able to build roads for me, and societal value towards centralization, which was my long-term goal. Why, I'll tell you later. And also from the peasants, I took a levy size and levy combat ability. So not much, as you can see. I'll be taking more privileges later for the game, where I decide that, okay, it's actually more worth to take a few more. As for advances, you start with Bulwark of Hinduism, that gives you 10% possible frontage, which is nice for your army. Anka year system, which gives you monthly legitimacy. And these 2 are unique for Orisa. Then you take another 5 that are unique for Hindu in this age. 5% research progress, very strong to get advances faster. Max literacy of clergy, institutional growth, and cultural influence and tradition. The last one is pretty useful to get the hegemon later. Then for the culture you also get a special subject type that is called Samana, and all of these subjects here are Samanas. I'll be also creating some more of them later. Plus you get +2 max irrigation level to simply get more food. So you know, with that strong income on day 1, you have really good situation to start investing that immediately into RGOs, building and marketplaces. And on top of that, you also have 2 cities at the very start, which most of the Europeans can only dream of. And over time, that's one of the strongest advantages of India. You have so much population, it's really easy to build cities. Of course, towns, you can do it in Europe a lot, but in the previous patch, you needed 30,000 population to create a city out of a town. In this new patch that I've played here, you need 50,000 population to get into a city, which is not an easy amount to get in Europe, quite easy to get in India. So what's the early game content? Well, as you see, there's huge Sultanate of Delhi that is about to fall. So in 1346, just a few years after the game start, there's a situation fall of Delhi that is happening. It splits India into two factions, one being Delhi, and later its subjects as well, and the opposing side, which is technically the strongest opposing country in India. And so when the situation starts, everyone in India gets an event to decide, okay, are you on side of Delhi or are you on side of the opposing? And then during the situation you can also change your stance. It is unfortunate because it's supposed to be the strongest power opposing Delhi, but in my game it was some shitty guy with 7 base stacks, that was it. And that's very unfortunate because that ruling party is supposed to get minus 20 antagonists received, 10% integration time, and minus 33% declare war cost, which would be a really nice modifier to have as Orisa. To end the situation, the opposing side needs to get 50% of the power share in India, while Delhi needs to share 100% of it to end the situation on their side. But yeah, in general, Delhi can also end the situation by hitting a disaster, which they did in this campaign, which will start fragmenting them into a lot of subjects. And that's what also happened in my game. They released subjects like Bahman is here, Malwa here, Jaunpur here, some guys here in Bengal and east to Jaunpur, and even here. So in the end, Delhi was like having Delhi and a few other locations, but funny enough, they kept all of these subjects under them until I killed Delhi, which took me a few hundred years. So in early game, my expansion was very much around the coast. I conquered lands all around here for myself, including subjects that I integrated. So you see the subjects that I had early on, they got integrated a bit later. So this was more or less what I had for myself. But then on top of that, I probably have to switch that color. On top of that, I also had plenty of subjects that had lands all around here. You know, this lands that I expanded into the continent, that's how it looks like. So we see expanding through the coast because it was much easier to spread control across all of these provinces, thanks to maritime presence and having my capital in the port. You don't start with the capital in the port, I had to move it by one location. So I could, in the first 100 years, keep around 90 to 95 of control all over the coast, spreading around 1-2 locations towards inland, plus of course all of the locations around my capital were also having very strong control, like 3-4 locations outside of it. And you know, early game expansion was pretty easy because you know, all of these guys are super weak, really easy to kill them. On the south are also the green guys here, they weren't that much of a problem. So the first 100 years and expanding these guys was not really problematic. It was a free game, I was the strongest in that region. And I tried to use as many subjects as possible, as you can see, because you only have 2 cabinet members as Orisa, and you know, I couldn't really integrate too fast without subjects. Using subjects allowed me to get these lands integrated immediately because I released them with integrated locations. And then once I annex this, the subjects, which doesn't take a cabinet member to do, I of course got immediately integrated province, and if I accepted the culture, I could have it as a full core, and that's what I leverage in the early game. But it's worth mentioning a few things for early game as well. What kind of advances they get in Age of Renaissance in this first 100 years? Well, as a country you get estate satisfaction, equilibrium, which is like 2.5%, and special unit, Orisa Elephant Cavalry, which, you know, very early on wasn't super important, but soon enough, around this 100 years mark, the standing army was about to start increasing. 2 another advances from religion for assimilation speed, very important to get full cores, as well as Pope join rebels threshold, very important for fast expansion. A lot of advances in this age are full. It has a sinus culture, but it's like everything, like being in the India region, being in Asia, having a specific culture, having a Hindu religion, 22 bonuses, but 3 were worth mentioning. 5% research progress for the being in the Arctic region, another 5% from being in Asia, so that's already 15% that I mentioned to you, right? And 10% culture's capacity for being in Asia. And finally, I didn't talk about it in the auto campaign, but it's an important point. In each age, you can choose a focus: admin, diplo, or mill that unlocks you 10 unique advances in that age. So it kinda works and it replaces the idea groups from EU4. So I chose an admin focus for Age of Renaissance, which gave me 5% max literacy, stability investment, so my stability is increasing faster, Deus Vult Casus Belli, important against all of these daily guys, right? As well as 2.5% proximity cost. That will be very important in my long-term build. I also do really like how they handled the Hindu religion. It's a big difference compared to EU4. Remember, in EU4 you just choose a deity, right? Every time you roll dice. Oh, and you have a privilege to replace it. Or maybe you have some extra events for some of the deities, like for example the God tier air, like for 666 for Surya. Well, in EU5 you do get also basic bonus, which is tolerance of true faith and heathens. And Hindu has different variations, different branches. The branch that Orisa is in is called Shaivinis, and each of the branches is not like different bonus, they also work a bit differently. Shaivism gives you access to gurus, which are actual characters that keep appearing through the game, and you can always have a guru that gives you a specific bonus. So, for example, it could be ones that give you 5% research speed, a bit of population growth, max literacy, increase of literacy, a lot of bonuses, so you could really dynamically change them. You can change at the cost of stability, or if one guru dies, you can just replace with someone else, and this way get another bonus. So that was really nice to actively change the bonuses you get from the gurus. Then, on top of that, you've got a mechanic of self-control, which works a bit like karma in EU4. So you have different bonus from being on around 0, so between -10 and 10 you get 10% research progress, another research progress bonus, some prestige and estate satisfaction, 10%, really strong. When you're negative, from -10 to -100, you get a scaling bonus to your max tax, increased food consumption, so that's a bad modifier, income from subjects 20%, and decreasing war exhaustion. For scaling positive self-control, you get decreased food consumption from your guys, minus 20% annexation cost, stop investment, and rural migration. So again, that's another modifier that can less dynamically, but long-term change depending on your plans. So for most of the game, I was using it for the research progress. But when I was about to annex a lot of subjects, I started scaling the positive self-control to get the annexation cost. And to handle that, there's no like wars don't really impact it like in EU4. Here instead have a few buttons that can leverage, like you have a button to perform yoga that gives you self-control and also prestige, cost prestige, and some few other buttons that can be used depending on the situation to change your self-control by 10-15. Okay, so by 1450, these are our stats. You see with the lands on that map, we've got almost 7 million of pops. For comparison, on that year as the Ottomans, I had 3.5 million. 100 locations, which is less than I had as the Ottomans, 194 over there, 1.5 thousand base tax. That's a base tax that I achieved as the Ottomans around 1540, and then 900 income. I achieved that in 1560 as the Ottomans, 300 of balance, and 15,000 of standing army. So you see, that's of course my skill getting better at the game, but also it's more like India being so strong. So since I have such a strong income, I was really maxed out on my RGOs, research gathering operations. I had roads everywhere, and strong buildings in the cities. And I had a lot of cities because there's so much population in these lands. But the most buildings that I had were for production of books, paper, cloth, fine cloth, tools, and mason. The last one for, any construction investment. Then I also had plenty of armories already, as you see from my standing army. And for more strategic investments, I had plenty of temples, which gives you proximity cost in the cities, libraries, and of course bridges for another proximity cost bonus. And cities were more than half of my own locations at this point. As for trading, most of the production in India is usually for your own pops, you have so many of them, but also selling a lot of books, salt, firearms, and ivory. Those were my main items I was exporting. This is how it looked like just 45 years later, in 1494. See, plenty of expansion, still focusing my own lands around the coast and going inland with the usage of the subjects. The main place where I expanded is a bit of Bengal, and then focusing mainly my expansion south. The main issues that I found at this point of game is that first of all of these guys here, they were in an alliance. So each time I wanted to expand south, I had to beat all of them. Then, you see here I conquered all of these small guys already. And same here, so if I wanted to expand west or north, I had to beat Delhi and their subjects, which I did a bit by expanding here in Bengal. But both wars on the north and the south were really tough for me. And what made them tough is one of the big changes in the latest patch that was released around the time I started this campaign, where they massively boosted levies in early game. When I played the Ottomans, as soon as I had standing army, it was destroying levies. Here you see I had this 15-20k of standing army, which is a great support, but not at all enough to beat their levies. Another issue, since there's so many pops in India, each time I had to fight in south or north, I was meeting around 200-300,000 of enemies. Why my levies it was probably, I can actually take a look in game, my levy size at this point of the game was 100 to 150,000. So it was a bloodbath each time I had to fight, and I kept killing pops from my main locations to expand. Of course, also keep killing the pops from enemies, so killing pops of the lands that I was expanding into. So I definitely did slow down the growth of the pops in India with all of these wars. But yeah, I would like to give appreciation that this change did make the early to mid game wars tough. I had to really sweat to win this. Another issue that I found in India in early game is that I didn't get any institutions for a long time. I mean the institutions from Age of Discovery, because I did take all of the advances from Age of Traditions, all of the advances from Age of Renaissance, but Discovery was behind. So even there was a few years when I wasn't even researching anything because of that. I think I started getting the New World institution when I started colonizing Andamans and islands south of Sumatra. In Age of Discovery itself, Odia gets two unique advances. One is Parikshas, which is Crown Power, 25%, and Odia Militarization, which is 5% Discipline. Around this point I also formed Empire, which changed my name from Maharaja of Orisa to Odia Empire. There are like 2 advances from culture, 3 advances from religion, but more importantly I took an admin focus again in this age, which gave me stuff like 25% trade capacity, 10 pop conversion speed, which wasn't that really important now, but later for some of the Theravada or Sunni lands it was important. 10% speed of integration, 10% building cost, iron and copper output, 10% pop-up simulation speed on top of the 10% I had on the previous age, 5% cabinet efficiency, and minus 10% urban building costs. So all of this were pretty much useful. The vast majority of my income was from the taxes, and again the trading was mostly internal. For external trading, most of the income was coming from salt, tobacco, elephants, tools, ivory, and pearls. So I think the new ones on top of the previous ones is pearls and tobacco that I started trading in. I also unlocked third guarantee form here for the cabinet efficiency and centralization. At this point, I already shaped some of my associative values, and that's something that I took a bigger focus on compared to my Ottoman game. So I focus on centralization, which at max gives you 50% crown power and minus 10% proximity cost, which helps with control over the provinces. And on top of that, I also did the traditional economy, which gives you 20% raw materials output, and we have some awesome raw materials in India. 25% population's capacity, so in India, pretty useful, and 20% food production. So many cities that I had, I think it was over 50% of my locations over here being cities, the food production was pretty important. This is how our borders look like just 5 decades later. You see, still a steady expansion in the east coast, well, half east of India, and slowly expanding into the Hag box in the south that kept forming coalition against me, and Delhi to the north. Very slowly expansion, but you see there's a massive amount of the pops in these locations, so it was technically slow location-wise, 370 at this point. It was 27 million of the pops that they had after 200 years of gameplay. 6,000 of tax, so I was also steadily developing these provinces. 4,000 of income and 1444 of balance. See, also that's also the point where standing army started becoming the pretty much whole army I was using. I was still leveraging a bit of levies here and there for the bigger wars, like when there's few hundred thousand of enemies, and even that standing army, it was stronger than the levies of enemies, but it was not significantly stronger. So around this point, the levies stopped being as good compared to the standing army. And so that was the definite switch to start using it more. Since I was an empire and a great power, I also became economic, army, military, and cultural hegemons easily. That coalition was pain in the ass, it was never going off. The guys on the south, so if I wanted to fight someone, it was either whole coalition or Delhi and its subjects. In Age of Reformation, Oda got another 2 advances. One for refined cloth production, which gives you 20% cloth and fine cloth output, and 5% cleric satisfaction. Another 10% food production from your religion. And then from culture, something very useful, which is 0.03% of population growth, which from my calculation should be like 8,000 more pops yearly that I was getting thanks to it, around that time of my population. I did take this time a military focus instead of admin. That gave me 20% siege ability, 25% culture's capacity, 10% supply limit, 20% fort defense, plus 1% hostile attrition, and minus 10% food consumption by units. I think the admin diplo focuses weren't as good, plus I felt like I need military quality to fight these wars. In this case, it's more like handling the forts and sieges. And I think, since I mentioned that, it's good to mention a big, in my opinion, the biggest issue on that current game version. I mentioned that it was great that they boosted levies, and one of the other big things that they changed are the sliders. So before, for all of the sliders, there was some basic cost even when the slider was at 0 for like your culture, government spending, or diplomacy. And it was the same for army and fort. But they changed on that patch, all of the sliders could be at 0. Which I think for some stuff makes sense. But like you lose prestige and have some small negative modifiers. I think they should rebalance by giving it much bigger negative modifiers. Like if you spend 0 on diplomacy, you should just lose a lot of improved relations, you should lose a lot of diplomatic reputation, you should get much more AE when expanding, right? That would make much sense to then force the player to at least keep some of the diplomacy spending. But why am I mentioning that? The issue is, AIs pay 0 for the force slider, which means they think they have a lot of money to invest into the force. So they build force in every single location, at least in India. But then, when the war comes, and they see how much it costs to maintain this force, you have a few months of rushing this force for free, which is not a great player experience. You just click an objective for your armies to focus each specific areas or provinces, and then you click between the armies and keep assaulting in the forts all the time. First few months is assaulting for free, after a few months they actually have some garrison. So this is not fun, and I just hope that they're gonna rework how it works, especially AI building and how many forts they build. Because another issue, AI doesn't update these forts as well, so they stay on the lower level. Ideally, and that was my suggestion, and I don't think it's gonna be implemented, there should be a limit of 1 fort per province. That would solve a lot of issues. AIs would have much more money on this fort, they would invest to improve them, and it would take time to siege this force without breaking the players' experience too much. If they don't rework this until the game release, that's gonna be bad. But I'm sure they're gonna find out some other solution, probably not what I suggested. By 1622, I formed Barat. And these are my borders. Not bad. Huh? It was big pain. But one thing that helped me speed up achieving this is realizing that when you declare Delhi or the subject, all the subjects get called in. But unlike in EU4, for these subjects, I'm not sure if it works. I think, and it doesn't work for normal subjects. For these subjects, unlike in EU4, you can separate piece them. So I could grab lands from Malwa, lands from Bahmanis, lands from Jaunpur, and lands from some other subjects at once in one war, which this is sped up my expansion a lot. So I was rushing India formation as fast as possible to get here. And while for previous screens I was showing you, I was pretty much having 90% of stuff being integrated. Here, about 30% of lands, everything north and west, and also northeast, was not integrated lands, because I rushed it so much. But you know, that Barat formation was fun. To form Barat, you in general need 861 locations in the India subcontinent. And you know, as soon as I formed Barat, I released subjects in like most of the northern lands, but I needed to own it myself to form it. Barat in general gives you 10 unique advances, but when you form a nation, you only unlock their advances from the next stage after you formed it. That's to avoid too much of modifiers stacking that EU4 allows you, you know, forming 2,000 different tags to get 3,000 different bonuses is one of the issues EU4 has. Let's be honest, right? For all the speed, like most of the speedruns are basing on this. So Barat gives you 10 advances. So I pretty much got 4 of them from Age of Absolutes onwards, but pretty strong ones. Minus 10 proximity cost, minus 5% separatism, 10% artillery power, which is called, the advances got them called Develop Rocket Technology, and then also 10% production efficiency. What was happening around that time as well is I've stacked out of literacy bonuses, so my average literacy was 44, other guys were more like around 20, 10, so I had huge advantage over them, and this combined with the research progress bonuses I told you earlier about, I had 2.8 of research progress. To give you a comparison, my Ottomans were around 1.92 of research progress on average in the campaign. I got 2 more guarantee forms, which is max literacy, that helped with that, but also for production. And I got 2 another societal values I was focusing on, one being innovative, that gave me institution cost 10% max literacy, 10% cultural influence, and 20% staff cost. And I also focused on mercantilism, which gave me trade maintenance, reduced trade efficiency, so that's a malus. 50% market protection. As I told you, trading in India, at least in my campaign, was mostly internal for my internal POPs needs. And it was also increasing the cost of exporting from our nodes for any foreign guys. At that time, we also had Cordian country. Remember, in my Ottoman campaign, I went for absolutism path. Here I decided to go for the liberalism, which I think worked well for us. I could keep all the privileges. It was easy to achieve. I just had to make the states pleased to achieve that, and kept all the bonuses. So it wasn't as hurting as it was for the absolutist path. So I still think they should boost absolutists to make it more worth. But yeah, with Barat formed, at first I wanted to end the campaign here. Goal achieved, let's go and play something else. But then I was like, what happens, how strong this country will be if I unite India? Because if in 1622 I have 78 million pops, 16,000 base tax. A reminder, as the Ottomans, I had 14,000 base tax in 1751. That's 130 years earlier, 2,000 more base tax. And also this income imbalance and standing army that you're seeing. So I decided, okay, let's go and keep doing that. Maybe I'll come up with some nice modifiers stacking when I look at some of the bonuses. So I decided to continue it. It was still pain because everyone around was in the coalition, so I had to keep trying to catch some specific tags and their allies while they're not in the coalition. That's what I kept doing. There was a huge Jelanader that was having all of these lands with 10 billion pops. Also, these guys were my main goal. Okay, let's keep them out of the coalition so I can attack them every few years. These are my borders by 1695. So I mostly focused my time on integrating the provinces, annexing subjects that I told you I released, and killing the guys in the north. You see, I got most of the Jalandra killed. They still have like 5 million pops here, or like 4 million. But in my own pops, I actually hit my peak at 125 million around that time with over 1,000 locations, 37,000 base tax. So I increased my locations from 900 to 1168 and more than doubled my base tax in that time. So it was not only getting buildings, unlocking manufactories and investing into them a lot. That increased the base tax a lot, how much I produced with good production methods, but also increasing control. I didn't mention that earlier, but my control was extremely strong. Let me actually open the safe and take a look at it. So the whole, let me just make sure that I have the map open as well. The whole coast was at like around 80-90%, here's of course 100 of control, but then I was spreading it also through the different rivers. Like Ganges let me spread the high control 80-90% all around here as well, and also a bit here and there in the Bahmanis vigilance through the rivers as well. So yeah, I also had some free time. I decided to also play around more with economy and exports. So I realized that I unlocked the newest lacquerware production, which was very expensive in my markets. My pops, like let's say I was producing in one of the nodes 10 of it and the demand was 200. So the price was like, sky was the limit of that price. So I first started making a lot of money from processing that internally, and when I hit the point where I was around like supply and demand was similar, I started exporting it or around India, and I was making a lot of money on export of that. So that was nice that I could also touch a bit more of the trade that in this campaign I was mostly automating. Production was actually building everything myself the whole campaign, just to avoid issue that I had with the Ottomans and the forts. But yeah, touching a bit of specifying production to reduce my cost of specifying goods in the internal market, or then export it to a market with a high cost. It was really nice to play around with it, and I think I have to play more campaigns like that have more of this kind of stuff. But yeah, about 90% of the stuff was already integrated here. I also, in the Age of Absolutes, got another admin focus. which gave me monthly development, bank interest, it doesn't matter for my money, but also 25% army initiative, but also 25% army initiative, and another minus 10% proximity cost. And this was accompanied in this age with a normal advance for age of absolutism for yet another 10% proximity cost. You see where I'm going, right? With the modifiers stacking. Let me show you what happened by the end of this campaign. Well, show you, explain to you. Let me show you the map first. So I'm not gonna even update anything here. I just ate the gel another in the middle and expanded a bit north just to clean borders. You see, I only expanded in this last 50 years by 50 locations. But what I did was the modifier stacking and focusing a lot on building the economy. So there's few things to mention here, right? You see the stats, right? Population, why? You played so many years, why the population just increased by 3.5 million? Well, guys, a second epidemic came in the 1700 and it killed 22 million of my pops. So that did hurt. And I was stacking here 3 different modifiers. 4 in total, okay. One is literacy, which I already mentioned earlier, but at this point, in 1747, my literacy was at 73. Nobody's even close to that in the whole world. Let me actually open that and see how much is in Europe. So literacy in France is around 30. In the British Isles it's around 40. In Germany it's around 50. Poland has 40. Wallachia is one of the highest in the world with 70. But yeah, in general, I would say average in Europe was 40. I was having 73 with all the modifiers stacking. That also allowed me to reach 3.2 of research progress speed. Also nice, right? But yeah, that wasn't like game-breaking stacking. That was nice to have, and I was really proud of it. What was game-breaking that I realized is stacking the control modifiers. So I mentioned to you a few times in this video, right? I was getting proximity cost. So now, with every location that you travel through the sea or through the land, there's some basic proximity cost that is gonna then impact how much control of the location you have. So I've stacked 41% of the global proximity cost modifier. Then I decreased the proximity cost, the basic proximity cost through land from 40 to 39, and I decreased it through the ports from the basic 30 to 25. Then, roads, I didn't have the railroads yet, I had the second to last in this age, so I could get even better if I played another 100 years. Modern roads gave you minus 30 proximity cost, and then there's local buildings like minus 5% from padlock canals, I had them in plenty of provinces, minus 5% from bridges for provinces with a river, and that's a big chunk of India, right? Then what also impacts this is having high development in a province, and with my amount of location and how it was all developed, the development across whole India was probably on average about 50, 60, so it was really high, and this 1% proximity cost per 1 development. So a province has 90 development, the proximity costs impact is minus 90. That's how strong it is. Probably the development impact has to be nerfed. So with all of this stacking, most of the proximity cost that I had between the provinces was 0.01, which is minimum. You cannot get lower than that. So even if I travel like from my capital to North Punjab, there was like 30 or 40 locations that you have to go through. Each of them costs most of them cost 0.01 of the proximity cost. So let me actually open the map. So one of the province on the very north of Punjab, next to Kashmir, was having 91% proximity. Thanks to that. So most of the provinces was 0.01, some of them were a bit higher, probably some rural locations on the way. But that's first thing that had strong. But, you know, even if the basic proximity is 91, it means that it gives you plus 70% to maximum control. So without other modifiers, I'll just have 70 control. But then I also stacked the control modifiers. You get 20% for having a full core, and I had them almost everywhere. 10% for having a city, and I had them almost everywhere as India. We get 5% from temple, which is a city/town building, and 5% from minting office, which is also a city/town building. So we have here 40% of the maximum control impact from all of this stacked. So with all of this, this is one map that I'd like to share with you. With all of this, about 80% of my locations in India, 1.2 thousand locations, had maximum 100 control. Most were at 90, that were below that, and a few were below with were not integrated or full cores. So there's like some stuff in Theravada provinces or some really few provinces in the whole country. Absolutely game breaking. Look how my stats look like with this. My base stack increased from 37,000 to, how much is it? To 80,000. And I think if I played till 1836, I could get it even much higher. Income 73,000. Balance 50,000. So even tried turning on automation for buildings. I was sitting at the maximum 999,000 of treasury, and I had to spend money myself on like manufacturers to not hit it. But yeah, that's an answer to a question. Is modifier stacking possible? It still is in this version, and I think I did a nice job of doing that without even planning long term, right? I just decided to plan on its on second half of the campaign. While having in mind I like these modifiers, but yeah, I absolutely enjoy this campaign. I think like when Ottomans joy 6.5, 7 out of 10. This Orisa was 9 out of 10. I think what made it also enjoyable was the fact that it was tough early on, because the levies were boosted. In mid game I had a goal to form India. It was also tough to, go between the coalitions and Delhi subjects. And in late game I had a goal of massive scaling and modifier stacking that made it also very enjoyable. The one thing that is not making it 10 out of 10 are a goddamn force that I already mentioned. But yeah, this is it for this whole video. You see, I am not playing 100 years and then jumping to another country, making you videos on each. I'm trying to play as long campaigns as possible while enjoying the game. So Ottomans was full campaign. This India is also pretty much a full campaign. And I already started playing yesterday as Denmark, which is a ruined campaign day 1, but already getting out of it. So I think that's gonna be my next interesting video as AAR after action reports on my next campaign. I hope you guys did enjoy this one. If you did, leave a like on this video and let me know what you think about the content that is there for India. Thanks for watching, and I'm gonna see you soon. Bye!